Hey there, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Revolutionary Health. Revolutionary Health is a program of the Counter Narrative Project, and our mission is to build power among Black gay men and to work in coalition and solidarity with all movements committed to racial and social justice. You should follow us online on Facebook at the Counter Narrative Project, on Instagram at the Counter Narrative, and on Twitter at Building Desire. You are here with us on YouTube, and I am grateful for that. While you are here, you should go ahead and hit the subscribe button, which is right there on your screen. You can see it down in the corner. And you should hit the thumbs up because you are liking this video. And while you're at it, just go ahead and share it to the world and let people know that you are here. So, thank you so much for joining us. I am Johnny Cornegay, and I am grateful to be the mobilization director for the Counter Narrative Project, and I am joined by...
Hi, I'm Michael Ward, actor, model, live here in the great city of Atlanta.
David Malbranch, physician, activist, all of that.
Yeah. So, tonight's show... Okay, you're watching my brain like do a million things, right? So tonight's show is a different show. So one of the things that I think is so beautiful about what we do at Revolutionary Health is we have the ability to address what needs to be addressed in our community, and this is that topic, right? So we were initially going to have another conversation, but we received news as a community, as a world, about the suicide of a 15-year-old Nigel Shelby from Huntsville, Alabama. And we wanted to take some time to not just talk about the topic, but really to hold space for Nigel's life and talk about all the things that we want to talk about, right? This is a pretty heavy topic. So I already see that there are folks, thank you so much for liking the video, folks that are watching with us right now. So what I would like for you to do is make sure that you chat along with us. There is a chat box right there on your screen. Please comment, please ask questions as we go through this. This is going to probably get personal, like at times, and we want to be able to hold one another as we talk about this. Right. So, here's where I want to begin. So I'm going to go in for a moment, and I'm getting really comfortable. So, for me, when I first heard about this story this past weekend, and first of all, I want to shout out, thank you so much for Jarrell, who says, "Hey there, brothers, I'm happy to be here and to hear this episode." Thank you so much for joining us, Jarrell. So when I first heard about this, before I even heard about it, I saw this beautiful smiling face come across my timeline, and I was like, who is this baby that is giving me all of this life? And then I read the story. And I immediately was like, in my feelings, because it was ninth grade for me. Nigel was in ninth grade. It was ninth grade for me, which was my year that I was heavily bullied. And it was the first time of a couple of like 3 times that I had considered taking my own life. And it took me back to those moments where I had to remember somehow I got through it, right? And I can remember the getting through it because it was such a heavy time, and I was like, oh, okay, I kind of remember getting through it. And so when I first heard the story, it just took me back to that for me. And so that was my first thought was, oh my God, who's this baby? And oh my God, I've been where he was. So I want to open with, what were some initial thoughts from the two of you when you heard about this?
Wow, for me it was similar because it was the same kind of thing, scrolling through and seeing Nigel's face on there, and then reading the story, and I started crying because for me it was still one of those things that it's like a teenager, a young Black man that was in the same position that I was in and felt the same way that I was feeling. Around 14, 15 was kind of the age for me as well when I contemplated taking my life. And I know I talked about it on the last Revolutionary Health, the music episode, because I was faced with bullying. And from me, it started in middle school, and it progressed toward high school. In middle school, I had a little bit more of a safety net. I went to a performing arts middle school, so I had the ability to act, draw, play the piano, ballet, dance. So I had an expression, sort of, to let that out. When I left my performing arts middle school, I went to a regular ass high school, a public high school.
Was that the name of it?
And
Regular ass.
I don't want to give y'all any credit for that. But I went to a predominantly black high school in the hood, and it was very different for me because I talked different, all of those things, and so I was getting bullied at school and I was getting bullied at home. You know, so for me it was like a never-ending cycle of faggot, punk, sissy, fudge packer, all of those things, and then coming home to receive the same sort of name calling and not feeling loved and abused. And it was kind of, for me, like, wow, like what could we have done? And for me, that's kind of what it was, of finding, like, you know, just a place for me, like what could have been done, because I was in that same situation and I made it out. So what could have been done to kind of hold him here? And it's just still heartbreaking, just looking at such a beautiful young soul and just gone, you know.
Yeah, I had the same reaction y'all both did, and Johnny especially, like looking at his face, like there was so much life in his face and in his expressions and those pictures that you saw. And I mean, when I think back to my high school, I went to a predominantly white high school in upstate New York that was a Catholic high school. And so I'm trying to remember, I wasn't bullied then because I wasn't really clear about my sexuality at that point. So I didn't get bullied too much. I think, you know, we did typical kid things, like people would call each other faggot and gay and this, that, and the other. And gay meant like corny. It didn't mean like you were sucking dick or getting with another dude. But we were also concerned about the brothers who were like the head teachers, because they were like, you know, inappropriately touching, you know, us, or were standing in the showers and like watch us as we were showering. Like shit like that would happen. And it was just kind of, you know, interesting back in those days. But, you know, I think when I thought about Nigel and how he, you know, how he took his own life, and then you see this person that's so full of life, you see these pictures, you see this social media platform, and again, I mean, we talk about this many times on Revolutionary Health, it's like you can't tell what's going on with somebody from their social media.
Right,
and he did give clues to some of the stuff, like I think he did talk about it in some respects, about bullying and some other things, but there were other things that would just kind of seem like he was just kind of regular and he wasn't having any problems with it. So, you know, I kind of got struck by that, and then I thought about Dwayne Wade and Gabrielle Union, and you know, the whole thing with his son and going to Pride and like all the backlash, and V103 stupid asses trying to bring it on and start up controversy and get people to say their negative bullshit. And anyone that would have anything negative to say about Gabrielle Union and Dwayne Wade and supporting their child as he goes to Pride, and as he, you know, discusses with them what his sexual orientation is and where his desire is, I just think it's just foolish. And so if you think that that's not necessary, or if you think that they're stupid, or if you think, you know, why do they have to, you know, the kid doesn't know he's gay, why are you supporting him? This is the reason why,
absolutely.
this is the reason why Gabrielle Union and Dwayne Wade are important. This is the reason why more parents like that are important. And for me, you know, as a medical provider, and I work in college health and student health, and so I'm seeing these kids coming into college, and some of them are comfortable with their sexuality. Some of them aren't really developed yet on that point. There's some of the kids that come in know exactly who they are, whether they're gay, whether they're gender non-binary, whether they're trans, whatever they are, they're very clear. And then there are a lot of kids that when they present to you and they're talking to you about stuff, you have to kind of pull stuff out. And you know that they've been bullied before, you know some things that happen, but they're not going to say anything in that clinical encounter. And I think, you know, it's on all of us to kind of do what we can as individuals in those settings and support people, because those little kids are going through it. Yeah. And with social media now, it's a lot tougher with y'all growing up in high school and in college than it was when I was back then, because we didn't have social media, and people couldn't just slay you
Right.
in an instant on, and something go viral.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a lot tougher. So you magnify, people hating, gender non-binary folks. They hate trans folks. They hate, same gender loving folks, and it just becomes so much more magnified. And I think the weight is so much heavier on our youth nowadays. That it crushes my spirit to see that someone with such a bright future and who was so smart kind of felt like his life wasn't enough because of how the external world viewed him and treated him.
Yeah, I want to come to that really quick. One of the things I want to acknowledge is we want to make sure that you have resources for yourself. So if you're having feelings of self-harm or suicide, it's important that you do reach out to the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. So that's 1-800-273-8255 or talk. And you can even chat online, which I think is like really, really dope.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org/chat, you can chat with someone if you're having any of those feelings. David, I want to come back to the point that you just made. I want to bring in a comment from Walter, and then I want to show us a video.
Mm-hmm.
But Walter said, and thank you, Walter, for this comment. I was fortunate that home was the only place I wasn't judged. School and church challenged me. I found peace and love at home with my very understanding parents. I wonder what his home life was like.
Interesting.
His mother seemed very accepting, but I think a loving home life truly grounds young queer kids to combat the world.
Yeah.
I want to, speaking of Nigel's mother, I want to come back and I want to talk about this comment, and actually I have some personal story here.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have a video of Nigel's mother who did an interview with NBC, so we're going to show a clip from that interview.
For you to call them names that you shouldn't call them, or say stuff to them, it sometimes have a worse effect than it would on a child who's not struggling with depression.
Kamika is now wondering whether something happened at school that day that prompted him to end his life. And as she prepares to lay her only child to rest this weekend, Kamika Shelby says she wants Nigel to be remembered as the kind, loving, special boy he was, and for all the joy and laughter he brought to the lives of everyone he met.
I don't want him to be remembered as a kid that was bullied for being gay and took his own life. He was so much more than that. He was sunshine, but he was just such a good spirit to have around. It breaks my heart because I feel like he had so much more love to give.
That was Kamika Shelby. That's Nigel Shelby's mom. And going into Walter's comment, and something I said last night, so we had a call to talk about this issue last night with the Counter Narrative Project. And one of the things I thought of, and I hadn't processed until then, was how I was so close and my parents would have never known. Probably until this show. Like, I think I may have mentioned it to my dad as I was home, and because it's going through stuff, so I may have brought it up because it was a lot of heavy combo.
Right.
But I don't know, and it's interesting that we talk. So we're bringing in that home life. My parents were amazing to me, and I don't know that they would have known how close I was at that time. So it was thank you for Ms. Shelby for doing that interview and speaking life, or putting her son's life in context for the world.
Yeah, I think it was important what she said about not wanting him to be remembered just for that. And I think, unfortunately, that's what people are going to remember him by. But the fact that she said, he was so full of life, and you're seeing these pictures of this, young, beautiful child who has the world to offer to everybody. It's just kind of sad to see it snuffed out that quickly.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's just, kind of to address the point of what you were saying about truly having a good home life. Like, I am so thankful for Black women in my life. Like, I feel like I have to hold them up in my life so much, because a lot of the things that I did not get in my home life, I got from other Black women and Black girls at the time that kept me in school. It was always the my black best friends, my girl best friends that held me up, because I didn't have at that time what I felt like was a truly loving home life. And even still, like she said, even in that, if she and then parts of the interview that you all didn't see, that she didn't suspect anything, that was going on with him. And I wonder a lot of times too about opening space and for black queer kids and black gay kids. Who are we able to talk, or who are they able to talk to or open up to, or those resources, and creating that space for the kids that don't have the supporting home life. It just,
Yeah, and you never know who's watching either, and kind of what you do. And I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but people always ask, what can I do? What can I do to kind of help, and how can I be different? And I just think whatever field you're in, you just have to be present and kind of speak up. If you see somebody being bullied for being gay, speak up. If you hear somebody, saying some shit like faggot or, belittling trans or gender non-binary folks, like speak up and correct them. If you're in a position, like I am, where I'm able to see youth as they're, coming to me for clinical services, but you can talk to them and leave an open non-judgmental space where they can be themselves and they don't feel like anyone's, judging them or critiquing them for just being who they are. Yeah. I think that always helps. And you can see it on their faces. You can see it in how they open up, and especially if they haven't felt that before, or if they've just felt it from their mother. I saw a student at Morehouse College not too long ago who was just talking about, his mother. And I was saying, well, we're going to get these labs. Does your mother know that you're sexually active? He was like, yeah. Does she know that you're gay? Yeah. And he was like, that's my heart. That's my best friend. And he just had so much joy about him and such a comfort with himself. And I knew that was because his mother was cool with everything. And so it makes a huge difference. And I'm sure it was, reassuring for him to come into this space. And he's talking about his sexual health and wanting to take control of it, and wanting to be on prep, and wanting to, discuss what he does and go into detail about what he does without somebody going like, what's that all about? And so, to have a space where you can do that, I think whatever field you're in or whatever you're doing, like that's the time to do it. If you have kids, if you're mentoring, if you're working at a school, if you're in education, like be attuned to that. Because these kids are going through it every day, and they're receiving negative messages from everybody else all day long. So if you can provide that one light, you never know when someone's really in a dark space, and you give them that one light and they can follow it out and kind of see where they're going and make their way home. So I think it's just important, like, not to underestimate what you can do as an individual. Right. It doesn't have to be a big program. It doesn't have to be, an intervention. It doesn't have to be a hotline necessarily. It can just be you and being who you are. And so I think about, us as black gay men, like, we have a lot of power, and we can do that just by being present, by being visible, by being who we are, by being honest about what we've gone through in the past and what we thought about, and letting them know it's okay if you get to that point, but you have help. And you're not the only one who's done that before. Right. You're not the only one who's gone through that before, and you'll make it through. I think, just living our lives very transparently and living in our truth is going to be enough in some cases. You think it's not. You think we need to be doing more, but in some cases, just kind of being that light, I think, will help people get home.
Yeah. That brought up, this might be an unpopular opinion. This is probably the first time I've done one of those on the shoot. But it's interesting because so often, so here's the reality. I know that for me, life can be tough sometimes. So I know that there's kind of the overarching, like, it'll get better. And I don't want to...
It gets better, that kind of...
I don't want to do... And what I want to do is kind of... That brought up this fact of, I want folks to understand, if you are watching this video and you're like, oh my goodness, I am going through a rough time, walk that next step forward, like whatever that thing is. And sometimes it's really hard. Sometimes it's really tough. Sometimes it feels like it's not going to get better. And I think it was Jericho Brown that said, if you could get a little bit of time behind you.
Right.
If you get a little bit of time behind you, like, I truly believe that every day that I wake up, I have the opportunity to make something better.
Right.
And so I try and remember that, but that's me personally. Before we go into kind of anecdotes for ourselves personally, though, I do want to go back to this idea of what can we do? Like, okay, so there's institutional things that can happen. There's personal things that can happen. If there were nuggets that you would pull out or things that you want to see personally, what would that be for folks, for young people?
For me, in my personal life, I think it's just mainly, and I love my nephew, hey Ontario, if you watch this one day. But for me, it's about really holding him close, regardless of the person that he becomes and his sexuality, of holding him close. And one of the things that I was mentioning to Johnny and David earlier is that a lot of times I felt in my own personal life is that I didn't really have that relationship with my father or another male figure that kind of was transparent and let me kind of know this is what it is or this is how you're feeling. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times with him, I try to say, hey, this is what it is. If you have anything, you can come and talk to me, because I realize as a kid, you're not always going to want to talk to an adult.
Right.
And try to create a non-judgmental space for him. But as well, I check his ass, and I'm like, we were riding in the car one time, and he was using like gay as a joking slur, like, oh, mm-hmm. something that this guy at school, whatever does, is so gay, or all of those things. And for me, I had to check him, but now I'm learning to check and love and not come at it, in a way of, hey, don't say that. But it's kind of like, well, why do you feel this way? Or where did you learn that from? Or where does this come from? Right. And so we can start talking about emotions, feelings, all of those things. So for me, I'm trying to start locally in my own life before I go out to anyone else in the world, because that's closer to me, and I can affect change in my own family, generational things that have been passed down about punk and sissy and laughing and all of those things, of starting that with me. But it's also my own personal journey of unshaking some of my own internalized homophobia. Mm-hmm. So it's about when I do recognize a brother that's pumping down the street, and I look him in the face and I give him agency, mm-hmm. and I give him space, and I see you. And that means a lot, even to kids, to older people that are going through it. So I think those are steps for me that I'm taking in my personal life, and I don't have the answers to everything about how we can create those, but those are things for me that I'm working on and doing in my own life.
I think for me, I think back to that Dan Savage promotional thing, which was like, it gets better to all the gay kids. And I always hated that shit. I hated it because I realized that for a lot of kids, it doesn't get better. And I don't think we do a service sometimes by painting just a rosy glass over it and saying, oh, it gets better, because it may not. And so I'd like to say, I don't know if I have an alternative phrase that I would use, like a catchphrase, but I say, it may not get better, but you have a lot of support. And you may still encounter this later on, but you're going to come into yourself. You're going to get more comfortable with yourself. You're going to get more powerful. And you're going to get more understanding of who you are. And you're not going to let this bother you as much, or you're not going to let people control your narrative as much. So, because it's like saying that racism, oh, it'll get better. Racism won't get better. I'm sorry. And, sexual prejudice or homophobia, that may not get better. So I try to make it so that, you have the internal locus of control. Like, you can actually fight this. And so it's about not ridding the world of stress or these isms that are coming down on us, but being able to grow in your own power and your strength, that you can fight through this. And it's not about, being resilient, because I hate when people say that, because it's always like, well, just be resilient. We're always so resilient. And it's like, well, being resilient is great to celebrate, but then we don't call out the systemic factors and all the bullshit that is, and we just put it on the individual to get over it. So I think, I dance that fine line with it, but I want to come from an affirming place and let people know it may not get better, but you have a lot of support. Yes. And you will get better.
Yes.
You will get better at handling this bullshit. Mm-hmm. You will get better at being more comfortable and more strategic with your power, and more knowledgeable of who you are and how high you're going to fly. But I don't want to paint it as, I don't want to give them bullshit and say it goes away. Or as you get older, you won't get called faggot, or you won't get called nigger, or you may get called that until you're 60, 80 years old. But I can tell you that you as an individual are going to get better, and you'll get through it.
Yeah.
But nobody, it's my firm belief that nobody gets through it alone. And the thing about Nigel that I worry about is that he didn't have anyone to really confide in. And so I think it's always important to tell people, like, if you're struggling with anything, and this applies to adolescents, adults, elders, tell one person. If you're struggling with something, find one person. I just got off the phone with some good friends, and have a good friend who just turned 50, and he's really going through some shit right now, and some shit that he didn't expect to go through at 50. And he said that on the phone to us. He said, I didn't think I would be going through this at 50. Like, and he had to ask us for help, and this motherfucker never asked for help. And he never asked for help. Like, he's one of the strongest people I know. But I knew it took a lot out of him. And he reached out to me, and then I pulled in our other friends, and we all had like a conference call, and we talked. And I think that's important with us. That's important with us as Black gay men, because we don't always have the biologic family. So we do need to be there for each other. And the unfortunate reality is, for a lot of these young kids coming up, they don't have those networks firmly in place already, so they're still searching for them. So where do they find them? How do we make ourselves present and visible to them so they can see us? Even if they can't touch us or talk to us personally, where can they see us? And that's what we have to work on.
Absolutely. First and foremost, I want to make sure we want to share resources. So if you have gotten to this video and you are watching now, and you are having feelings of self-harm or suicide, please contact the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255 or talk. And if you want to chat online, you can do it at suicidepreventionlifeline.org/chat. Thank you so much for being here with us. I want to bring in a couple of comments before we begin to wrap the show. I'm gonna go back because there's a question here. So first and foremost, hi John Jordan. John Jordan says hello. Thank you for being here, John. Elijah says, we miss Nigel. Thank you so much, Elijah, for being here and watching the show. The Epic 1976, I love that name. First of all, you're using the Epic logo from the record label, which is hot. So the Epic 1976 says, I hated that ad as well. Each experience is different, but I see the positive. Everyone has to find their tribe. Thank you so much.
Amen.
And John Young, so here's a question from John. Thank you so much for asking this question. It's great that Nigel had such a supportive mom. I'm wondering, where was his dad? A broader question is, where are the fathers, the Black men in these SGL young bros' lives? And I don't know that any of us have the answer to that question, John. But what I will say, and this goes back to David, I think you made this point earlier, like that's why we celebrated Dwayne Wade's son, Dwayne Wade and Gabrielle Union, like supporting their son going to Pride. I think we have to encourage Black fathers to love on their sons, like love on their kids, period. But their gay sons, love on them. My dad is dope. Like, shout out to my dad real quick. I've never officially, sometimes he watches the show. I don't think he's watching tonight.
Shout out to Dad.
Johnny Ray Cornegay Jr., who calls me every day to tell me he loves me.
Right.
And I'm grateful for that, and I will never ever take that for granted.
Yeah.
And I think we have to support Black men loving on their gay sons. Their, unconditionally, publicly showering with love. So yeah, that's where I am with that. But I don't know that we know the answer to specifically Nigel's situation. But I think we just need to be vocal and support.
And whether it would make a difference either, you know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of people want to say and jump on that bandwagon, was like, if his father was in the house, then da-da-da-da-da. We don't know that for sure. We don't know whether he would have felt more love. And even if he was accepted by both his mother and his father, there are kids that still can commit suicide. And still have those feelings, even with the support of their parents. But I'm hopeful that his dad was around or nearby, or at least tried to be a good father in that respect. I know, my father was a great father, still is a great father. He's 87 years old. Shout out to Dad. But he wasn't comfortable with my sexuality, and didn't find out about it till I was like 23, and didn't really accept it for a number of years, and then he finally came around. But it's like, it's just one of those things where you have to search it out through different ways. I think everybody's different. For some people, it may have broken them. I had other support systems. I had other people in my life that kind of stepped up and showed me love, from friends to mentors and stuff like that. So I was able to kind of carve out a little bit of existence in a space in the world where people could love on me and affirm me, even though my biological father loved me, but couldn't love me the way I felt he needed to with regards to my sexuality. And, I think it's also a journey, too, because you have to get to a point where you have to forgive parents if they can't accept you for your sexuality. And so it's not really about, the parents forgiving you for being, same gender loving. It's about you getting to a point where you're okay with them because they may not always accept you, and not internalizing to the point where you would either hurt yourself by suicide like that, or what happens more frequently is kind of like a slow kill.
Yes.
And so we engage in behaviors that like slowly try to kill ourselves, and not do it in one fell swoop, but like, put ourselves in situations that are going to be harmful to ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other show to itself, and how we all can go down that path. But it happens.
I want to do for final thoughts. So I want to make sure, so a couple of things. Thank you to everyone for being here. I'm looking at the screen. The camera's up there. I'm sorry, I do this every week. It's hilarious. So I want to thank everyone for being with us this evening. And what I would like to ask the folks who are watching the show, if you have the ability to, is leave any messages, any feelings, any thoughts that you have. If there is someone who stumbles upon this video and they need a word, go ahead and drop it in that chat, because guess what? It'll be here for as long as the video is here. So I want to take that opportunity now as we begin to wrap up, for y'all to leave messages for folks who may land here.
Right.
What I want to do is also do the same thing in this room. It got me thinking, if there is someone who's arrived at this place and you need a moment, what I want to say is, and this is just me, this is Johnny, and what I've learned over time, and it goes back to what both David and Michael have said. For me personally, it has been every day is a walk, and I surround myself with amazing people that affirm me, and that has been one of my lifelines. And if there are folks in your life who, it can be whoever it is, it could be friends, it doesn't have to be your parents. It can, if it's your parents, great, that's amazing. But if it's not your parents, is it an aunt? Is it an uncle? Is it a grandparent? Is there, I was talking to a doctor earlier today about this topic, and it was like, it could be a friend's parent, somebody that you trust, a teacher,
right,
guidance counselor, someone that you trust, that has looked out for you, that you can go to. Go and talk to that person, and begin to take that walk forward. That would be my tip, is find that person and talk to them now, because you are worth it. Any final thoughts?
If you've stumbled upon this video and you are contemplating that, the things that I would say definitely is that you're loved. You're loved. You're here for a reason. You have a purpose. That there are people in your life that love you, and will continue to love you regardless of your sexuality or your sexual identity. That just take every day one step at a time. If it's second to second, minute to minute, if you just have to stop and breathe, then do it. And as you said as well, I mean, find someone to talk to. If you can't talk to somebody, write it down. Whether that's poetry, whether that's a letter, whether that's an email, whether that's an instant message. There are so many resources that involve today's technology. So if you can't verbalize or vocalize your emotions, you can play someone a song and say, I relate to this. This is how I'm feeling inside. That way someone knows, you know that you can get that out. So you're here for a reason, and you are loved.
I see we have some comments on
Yeah.
there. Did you want to read those?
Yeah, it's this is a pretty long one. But
From
I'm
Jarrell.
gonna, yes.
You want me to say something first, or
Yeah, go
read
ahead
this
and you
first?
say something first, and I'll bring this in.
No, I'm a big proponent of choosing one person, finding somebody, and even like Michael just said, I'm a big believer too. Like in the context of a relationship, like I've heard people have bad relationships and breakups, and they write a Dear John letter to their ex, and to me, the point is always you don't have to mail it or click send on the email. Just get it out.
Yeah.
And so if you get that out of your system, whatever you're feeling in an expressive way, whether it's song, whether it's dance, whether it's words, whether it's poetry, whatever it may be, you may not even need to send it to somebody. It's about kind of releasing it so it doesn't stay bottled up inside you and then fester. And so find one person you trust. If you're struggling with this, if you're struggling with depression, if you're being bullied, and also if you're being bullied, tell somebody.
Yeah.
You know, and then I'm also a big proponent of fighting back too. So bullies are usually cowards, and so they keep bullying because no one slapped them in the mouth. So sometimes if somebody does slap them in the mouth, they start crying, and you see what's going on. So I'm a proponent of all those things. So take the alternative that's going to be best for you. But remember, you don't have to be a victim with it. Find help, fight back, tell somebody, any combination of those ways that you can handle it, but handle it in an affirming way that resonates with who you are and affirms who you are.
Yeah. So I am going to end us by reading the comments from Jarrell. Thank you so much, Jarrell, for the comments. And Jarrell said, it's very difficult, but we as humans must learn how to practice kindness. David does not know me from an unopened can of paint, but he opened his home and heart and life for me to be able to celebrate my life. Without him, I would not be here in Atlanta today, nor could I be as strong as I am today. We must all do our job to hear others out and be stepping stools to help others day in and day out. As a PE teacher in the Atlanta School District, and I always show extra love to my LGBTQ students.
Amen.
And they love the fact that they do have a coach who's part of the LGBTQ plus community.
Come on.
So thanks, Unc, for helping me become much stronger for others.
Get it,
Thank
Nev.
you.
Stop trying to make me cry on camera. You're doing that. Thanks, Nev. Love you too.
I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. If you haven't done so and you are here, please hit the like button to let folks know that you enjoyed this video. Please do share it as well. So, couple of things. I'm going to do some housekeeping things. Please follow The Counter Narrative on social media. You can find us on Facebook at The Counter Narrative. You can find us Counter Narrative Project. You can find us on Instagram at The Counter Narrative and on Twitter at Building Desire. Please make sure that you visit thecounternarrative.org and join our mailing list. That's where we send out all of the updates for what's happening on a regular basis. Very important, and this is also in the comments too, if you are having any feelings of self-harm or suicide, please contact the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. That number is 1-800-273-8255 or TALK. And you can do the online chat. So that is suicidepreventionlifeline.org/chat. I want to thank...
Can I do one shout out?
Please.
Over the weekend, I got to go to New York City and Saturday participate in the Mobilizing Our Brothers initiative, Moby Talks in Harlem, New York. And I want to shout out Deshaun Usher and Julian Walker and all the amazing brothers at Moby, that while we're talking about like organizations and spaces where people can be themselves and see us in all our glorious diversity. And shout out to, I believe it was Vic and Chris, who host the Living Out Loud podcast, which is absolutely amazing in New York City. So if y'all are in New York or anywhere else and you want to kind of get some same gender love going on with good events, good talks, good, just good energy and policy stuff that's going on. Mobilizing Our Brothers initiative is really amazing in New York City. So shout out to them for having me be part of their event. It was really, really wonderful. So.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you all. Have a good one.
Rest in power, Nigel.